heart of the lush green valleys of Wajumba, a village where the wind carried stories and the rivers hummed ancient songs, lived a girl named Zalika. She was known far and wide for her gentle spirit and kindness. Her laughter echoed through the market streets, and her voice was as soothing as a mother's lullaby. The villagers adored her, saying her heart was as pure as the clear waters of the Meshele River. But not everyone loved Zalika. Her stepmother, Nyara, watched her with eyes that held more shadow than warmth. Nyara was a woman of sharp beauty and a sharper tongue. She wore fine beads and bright cloth, but jealousy twisted inside her like a snake. Every time she saw Zalika's kindness, her heart burned with envy. She hated how the villagers spoke of Zalika's beauty and grace, while they only looked at Nyara with polite nods and quick glances. Nyara had a daughter of her own, Kibibi, a girl who tried to mirror her mother's pride and sharpness, but couldn't quite match it. She often watched Zalika with a mixture of resentment and longing, wondering why the village loved her stepsister more than they loved her. Nyara filled Kibibi's ears with whispers, telling her that Zalika was stealing everything that should belong to them. While Zalika woke each morning to gather water and help the elders, Nyara woke with a new thought every day: how to get rid of Zalika for good. Hidden beneath her careful smiles and sweet words was a secret, a dark, dangerous plan that would soon unfold. And Zalika, innocent and trusting, had no idea the woman who raised her was about to lead her straight into a deadly trap. Zalika was the kind of girl who made people believe the sun shone a little brighter when she smiled. Her eyes held the warmth of the morning sun, and her voice was soft and soothing, like the wind that danced through the banana trees. People said her voice could calm storms and bring peace to restless hearts. Children ran to her when they scraped their knees, knowing she would comfort. The elders often praised her, saying she had the soul of an ancestor, wise, gentle, and full of light. Zalika never turned away anyone in need, whether it was helping an old woman carry water from the river or sharing the last piece of bread with a hungry child. She did everything with a heart full of kindness. The villagers adored her. Mothers would tell their daughters to be like Zalika, and fathers wished for their sons to find a wife with her heart. Even animals seemed drawn to her. Birds often perched nearby when she sang, and stray dogs wagged their tails when she passed. It was as if nature itself loved her, but not everyone felt that way. Nyara, her stepmother, watched this admiration with burning jealousy. She couldn't stand how people looked at Zalika with love and praise, while barely noticing her own daughter, Kibibi. Nyara believed Kibibi deserved that attention, that admiration, and it boiled her blood to see it all go to Zalika instead. Kibibi was a reflection of her mother, sharp-featured and proud. She wasn't cruel, but she carried her mother's bitterness like a heavy cloak. She envied Zalika's effortless grace and kindness. No matter how much Kibibi tried to impress the villagers, it was always Zalika they spoke about. Nyara filled Kibibi's head with poisonous words, telling her that Zalika wasn't special. She was stealing the life Kibibi deserved. "You're the true daughter of this home," Nyara would whisper. "Zalika is nothing but a shadow, taking what belongs to you." Kibibi, desperate for her mother's approval, began to believe it. She started to see Zalika not as a sister, but as a rival. Nyara's jealousy grew like a weed, twisting her heart. She couldn't understand why Zalika's light shined so brightly, while her own daughters seemed to flicker. Each compliment Zalika received was a thorn in Nyara's side. The more the village loved Zalika, the more Nyara's hatred grew. She smiled in front of the villagers, pretending to be a loving mother, but behind closed doors, her eyes burned with anger. Nyara convinced herself that Zalika's light needed to be snuffed out for Kibibi to finally have the place she deserved. She started to plot, her mind swirling with ideas, each more dangerous than the last. Zalika, innocent and trusting, never noticed the dark looks her stepmother gave her. She never saw the danger growing in Nyara's eyes. She believed they were family, and family, she thought, would never hurt you. But Nyara was no longer thinking like a mother. She was thinking like a woman who wanted revenge, and soon her jealousy would turn into something far more dangerous than Zalika could ever imagine. One day, as the sun hung lazily in the sky and the village of Wajumba bustled with life, a stranger arrived. He was an old herbalist named Kamari, with skin like the bark of an ancient tree and eyes that seemed to hold stories older than time. His clothes were worn, patched with different fabrics from distant lands, and he carried a wooden staff covered in small charms that clinked softly with every step. The villagers gathered around him, curious about the man who walked as though the earth itself made way for him. Kamari spoke in a deep, steady voice that seemed to command silence. He told tales of his travels, of mountains that touched the sky and rivers that glowed under the moonlight. But what truly captured the villagers' attention was when he spoke of the Cave of Whispers, a hidden place beyond the great hills, where a gemstone of unimaginable power lay guarded by an ancient spirit. He claimed the one who possessed the stone would have the strength to bend fate itself. Crops would flourish, sickness would vanish, and no enemy could stand against the holder of the stone's power. The crowd murmured with excitement, but Nyara's heart pounded for a different reason. As Kamari described the gemstone's powers, a twisted idea bloomed in her mind. This wasn't just a treasure, it was an opportunity to finally be rid of Zalika. Nyara listened carefully, her eyes narrowing with wicked determination. She didn't care about power or prosperity. All she could think about was how this could be her chance to make Zalika disappear forever. A cave guarded by an ancient spirit. It sounded like the perfect trap. If Zalika ventured into that cave, she would never return. The village would mourn her, but in time, they would move on. And Kibibi, her precious overlooked daughter, would finally stand in the light, free from Zalika's shadow. That night, long after the village had gone quiet and the fires burned low, Nyara sat by the window, staring into the dark. Her mind twisted and turned, shaping a plan. She would convince Zalika that the stone wasn't for power, but for healing. Zalika was too kind, too selfless to resist if she believed she could help the village. Nyara smiled to herself, a cruel, cold smile. Zalika's kindness would be her downfall. The next morning, Nyara found Zalika weaving a basket by the river. Her hair glistened in the sunlight, and her hands moved gracefully. She looked so peaceful, so unaware of the danger that waited for her. Nyara approached with a sweet, gentle voice that didn't match the darkness in her heart. "Zalika," she began, "did you hear the herbalist's story? He spoke of a stone that can heal the sick and bring prosperity to our village. Imagine how many people you could help if you brought it back." Zalika's eyes lit up with hope. The thought of helping her people filled her heart with warmth. "Do you think it's real?" she asked softly. Nyara nodded, hiding her smirk. "Kamari wouldn't lie, but the journey is dangerous. Only someone pure of heart could survive the Cave of Whispers. I believe you're the only one who can do it, Zalika. You're brave and kind. The village needs you." Zalika, innocent and trusting, felt a swell of determination. If there was even a chance she could help her people, she had to try. She didn't notice the flicker of triumph in Nyara's eyes as she agreed to go. As Zalika began preparing for the journey, Nyara watched from a distance, her heart thudding with excitement. For the first time in years, she felt hope, not for the village, but for a future where Zalika no longer existed. She didn't feel guilt or remorse. In her twisted mind, this wasn't betrayal, it was justice. And soon, Zalika would walk straight into the trap Nyara had so carefully set. Nyara's plan took shape like a shadow creeping across the ground. She knew Zalika's heart was too pure to ignore the chance to help others. All it would take was the right words, wrapped in enough sweetness, to lead her stepdaughter straight into the trap. Nyara spent the evening by the fire, pretending to worry about the village. She spoke softly, just loud enough for Zalika to overhear. If only someone could find that gemstone, she sighed, her voice laced with false sadness. It said to heal the sick and bring endless blessings to our land. Our crops would grow stronger and no child would go to bed hungry again. But it's too dangerous. The cave is too far, too treacherous. No one in the village is brave or pure enough to survive it. Zalika, who had been quietly mending a torn cloth nearby, looked up with wide, thoughtful eyes. Nyara didn't need to look at her to know she was listening. Maybe, Zalika said softly. Maybe I could do it. Nyara turned to her, feigning surprise. Oh, my sweet girl, she said, her voice dripping with false affection. I couldn't ask that of you. It's too dangerous, but... She paused, letting the moment stretch. You are different. Your heart is so kind, and your spirit is pure. If anyone could succeed, it's you. Zalika's heart swelled with determination. She couldn't stand the thought of her people suffering, children falling ill, elders growing weaker. If this gemstone could truly bring healing and prosperity, how could she not try? She imagined the smiles on the villagers' faces, the joy and relief they would feel. The idea of failing never crossed her mind. Nyara saw the flicker of resolve in Zalika's eyes and knew she had her. She placed a gentle hand on Zalika's cheek, pretending to be a loving mother. You would be a hero, Zalika. The village would never forget your sacrifice. The word sacrifice lingered in the air, but Zalika didn't notice. She only felt the pull of her own compassion. She nodded, her voice steady. I'll do it. I'll bring the stone back. Nyara smiled, but it wasn't a smile of pride or gratitude. It was a cruel, victorious smirk that Zalika couldn't see. The next morning, Zalika set off before the sun had fully risen. Nyara watched from the doorway, pretending to wipe tears from her eyes as the villagers gathered to see Zalika off. They believed Nyara's lie, that Zalika was going to save them all. The people cheered for her bravery, unaware that they were sending her to her death. Zalika walked with hope in her heart and a small bundle of food and water in her hands. She didn't know that the path to the Cave of Whispers was lined with thorns and jagged rock. She didn't know the wind would howl like a beast, or that the trees would seem to reach for her with twisted branches. And she certainly didn't know the truth about the cave. The Cave of Whispers wasn't a place of healing or power. It was a prison, cursed long ago by a betrayed spirit. It lured in the kind, the selfless, the pure of heart, and it devoured them. No one who entered ever returned. Their whispers were all that remained, carried on the wind, begging for freedom. Nyara knew this. She had heard the warnings from the old women who spoke in hushed voices late at night. She didn't care. All that mattered was that Zalika would never come back. As the sun climbed higher, Zalika disappeared into the horizon, her heart full of hope. Back in the village, Nyara smiled to herself. The trap was set, and soon Zalika would be nothing more than a whisper in the wind. Zalika stepped into the mouth of the cave, her heart steady but her breath quick. The air inside was cold and damp, wrapping around her like icy fingers. The light from the entrance faded fast, swallowed by the darkness. Each step echoed, making it sound like the cave was breathing with her. The walls were jagged and wet, and strange symbols, glowing faintly, seemed to pulse as she passed them. Still, Zalika pressed on, her mind focused on the village and the hope that she could bring back the gemstone to heal the sick and bless the land. But the deeper she went, the more the cave felt wrong. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the air itself didn't want her there. Then, faintly at first, she heard it. Whispers. They slithered through the darkness, soft and broken, like voices calling from far away. Her steps slowed as the whispers grew louder, overlapping and echoing around her. Some sounded like cries, others like warnings. Turn back, one voice moaned. She sent you here to die, another hissed. Zalika's chest tightened. Who's there? She called, her voice shaking. The cave didn't answer, but the ground beneath her trembled slightly, and a cold wind rushed past her, carrying the whispers with it. Zalika's heart pounded. She wanted to believe it was just her imagination, but the fear creeping into her bones felt too real. Still, she couldn't give up, not when the village was counting on her. She took another step forward, and the ground gave way beneath her. She fell, landing hard on a patch of cold stone. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. Gasping, she pushed herself up, her body aching. She blinked through the darkness, but this time it wasn't dark. A soft blue light filled the cavern. In the center, where she expected to find the gemstone, stood a figure. He wasn't a man, not really. His body flickered like smoke, his eyes glowing like moonlight. His face was sorrowful, ancient and powerful all at once. I am Ajani, the figure spoke, his voice deep and filled with sadness. The guardian of this place. You should not be here, child. Zalika stared in shock. The gemstone. I came to find the gemstone to save my village. Ajani's expression darkened. There is no gemstone, he said. There never was. This cave holds no treasure, only a curse. I am its prisoner, a spirit bound by betrayal and grief. And now you, pure of heart, have been led here to suffer the same fate. Zalika's throat tightened. No, my stepmother said. Ajani's eyes burned brighter. Your stepmother lied. She knew the truth. This cave does not test the brave. It devours the innocent. It hungers for those with pure hearts, like yours. She sent you here to die. The words hit Zalika like a dagger. Her knees felt weak. Her stepmother, the woman who raised her, who should have loved her, wanted her dead. She couldn't believe it. But deep down, the truth settled like a stone in her heart. Niara's gentle words, her sudden kindness. It was all a lie. Zalika's trust had been a weapon used against her. Tears burned her eyes, but she swallowed them back. Is there a way out? She asked, her voice trembling but determined. Ajani studied her for a moment, surprised by her strength. There may be a way, he said slowly, but it comes with a price. To break the curse, someone must carry the burden of my betrayal, to face the darkness and survive it. Many have tried, none have succeeded. Zalika's heart pounded harder. Fear wrapped around her, but she refused to let it take hold. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her village, for the people she loved. And now, she was fighting to prove that Niara's betrayal wouldn't define her. I'll do it, she said firmly, her voice steady. I'll face whatever darkness comes. Ajani's eyes softened with something that almost looked like hope. Then may your heart be stronger than those before you, he said, because the cave won't let you go without a fight. The blue light flickered, and the whispers rose again, louder this time, angry and restless. The ground rumbled beneath her feet. The darkness wasn't done with her yet. Zalika stood before Ajani, her heart pounding in her chest. The whispers of the cave swirled around her, growing louder, angrier. She could feel the weight of the curse pressing down on her, as if the cave itself was trying to pull her into the stone. Fear clawed at her, but she didn't let it take hold. She wasn't ready to die, not like this. Ajani's glowing eyes watched her carefully, his form flickering like smoke in the wind. He looked ancient and powerful, but there was sadness etched into his face. The sadness of someone who had been trapped for far too long. You cannot escape, Ajani said, his voice low and heavy. The cave only releases the wicked. The pure-hearted are bound here forever, their souls feeding the curse. That is why your stepmother sent you. She knew you would never return. Zalika's stomach twisted, but she pushed the pain away. She wasn't ready to give up. If you're trapped because of betrayal, she said slowly, her mind racing, then maybe there's another way. What if I take your story with me? What if I make sure the world remembers what happened to you? Ajani's eyes flickered with something, surprise, maybe even hope. Why would you do that? He asked, his voice softer now. Because no one deserves to be forgotten, Zalika said firmly. And I'm not leaving this cave empty-handed. If there's no gemstone, then I'll take your truth instead. Let me carry your story back to the living world. Let me break the curse. The cave seemed to go silent for a moment, the whispers pausing, as if they too were waiting for his answer. Ajani stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, his expression shifted. The sadness lifted, replaced by something stronger. You would do this for me? He asked. Zalika nodded. Yes, but I need your help. Give me your power, and I'll make sure the world remembers you. I'll make sure no one else falls into this trap. Ajani's form began to glow brighter, the blue light surrounding him pulsing like a heartbeat. A deal then, he said. His voice echoed through the cave, stronger than before. I give you my power, and you carry my truth to the world. The light exploded outward, blinding and warm. Zalika shielded her eyes, feeling a surge of energy rush through her. It was like fire and wind and light all at once, filling her veins, making her stronger. The weight of the cave's curse lifted from her chest. She could breathe again. The whispers turned to screams. Angry, desperate, the cave trembled, cracks spreading along the walls. The dark illusions that had trapped so many before her began to shatter like broken glass. The jagged rocks melted away, revealing a clear, open path leading back to the world outside. Ajani's form began to fade, but his eyes were peaceful now. "Go, Zalika," he said softly. "Live, and make sure they remember." Zalika nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I will." She didn't waste another second. She ran, her steps sure and strong, guided by the glowing light now burning inside her. The cave roared in protest behind her, but she didn't look back. She wasn't afraid anymore. As she burst into the sunlight, gasping for air, the cave's entrance collapsed with a thunderous crash, sealing the darkness inside forever. Zalika didn't flinch. She had survived, and she carried more than just her life with her. She carried Ajani's truth, his power, and the strength to face whatever came next. And back in the village, her stepmother had no idea that Zalika was still alive, or that she was coming home stronger than ever. The village fell into a stunned silence, the weight of the confession hanging heavy in the air. Eyes widened, and whispers spread like wildfire, disbelief and outrage mixing together. People who once trusted without question now stared in horror, realizing they had been deceived. The wind swirled again, stronger this time, carrying an unearthly hum that vibrated through the ground. The air felt charged, thick with something ancient and powerful. It wasn't anger, it was justice. The same force that had protected Zalika now demanded the truth be heard. The crowd watched, frozen in place, as the trembling figure tried to resist. Every attempt to deny or twist the story was crushed before it could form. Words spilled from her lips, raw and unstoppable, as if the truth was tearing itself free. "I wanted her gone," the voice choked out, trembling with fear and fury. "She was too kind, too beautiful, too loved. I wanted my own daughter to have that love. I thought if she disappeared, everything would be better. I never believed she'd survive." Gasps filled the air. Shock turned to anger. The people who once admired and pitied the woman now looked at her with betrayal burning in their eyes. The illusion of a grieving, worried mother shattered before them, leaving only the cruel truth behind. Children clung to their mothers. Elders shook their heads in sorrow, and the men who once respected her felt their hearts harden. The village wasn't just betrayed, they were complicit, cheering for a girl who walked into her own death, believing it was for their sake. The wind died down slowly, the voice fading back into silence. The power that forced the confession was gone, but the truth lingered, unshakable and permanent. There was no going back from it now. Eyes turned, not in pity or fear, but in awe and admiration for the figure who still stood strong. The light around her dimmed to a gentle glow, no longer blinding, but warm and steady. There was no need for words. Her survival spoke louder than any accusation could. The village, once trapped in lies, now saw clearly, and they would never forget. Nyara's confession hung in the air like a dark cloud, and the village square was silent except for her ragged breaths. She collapsed to the ground, trembling, as if the weight of her own betrayal had finally crushed her. Her once proud face, always carefully composed, was now streaked with tears and fear. The villagers stared at her, their eyes filled with shock and disgust. This wasn't the woman they thought they knew. This was a stranger, a liar who had tried to sacrifice an innocent girl for her own selfishness. Kibibi, who had been standing near the back of the crowd, pushed through the sea of people. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. She looked at her mother as though seeing her for the first time. "Mother, tell me it isn't true." Kibibi's voice was barely a whisper, trembling with hope that this was all some mistake. "Tell me you didn't do this." Nyara looked up at her daughter, her lips trembling, but no words came out. She couldn't deny it. The truth had already escaped her, raw and undeniable. Kibibi's face crumpled as the truth settled in her heart. Her mother had tried to kill Zalika, not out of necessity or desperation, but out of jealousy. Tears welled in Kibibi's eyes, and her voice cracked. "You told me Zalika was trying to steal my place, that she wanted to take everything from me. You made me hate her, but it was all a lie. She was never my enemy. You were." Nyara reached for her daughter desperately, but Kibibi recoiled, stepping back. The betrayal in her eyes was deeper than words could express. You told me to be cruel to her, and I listened to you. I believed you. I hurt her too, because I trusted you. Zalika stepped forward, her glowing form now soft and warm, like the morning light after a long, dark night. Her face wasn't angry or vengeful. It was full of sadness. Sadness for Kibibi, for the village, even for Nyara. Kibibi turned to Zalika, her voice breaking with guilt. Zalika, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see it. Can you ever forgive me? Zalika's heart ached for Kibibi. She had been a pawn in Nyara's plan too, twisted by her mother's lies. Zalika placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, the warmth of Ajani's power still flowing through her. I forgive you, Kibibi. You didn't know the truth, but now you do, and you can choose to be better. Kibibi's tears spilled over, and she nodded, her body shaking with quiet sobs. The village elders, who had been watching silently, finally stepped forward. Their faces were grim and heavy with the weight of what they had witnessed. The oldest among them, a man named Baba Jengo, spoke in a voice that carried across the crowd. Nyara, you have committed the gravest betrayal, not only against Zalika, but against this village and your own daughter. You poisoned our hearts with lies and nearly condemned an innocent soul. For this, you can no longer stay among us. His voice was steady, though sorrow flickered in his eyes. You are exiled from Wajumba. You will leave before the sun sets, and you may never return. Nyara let out a strangled cry. Please, no! I did it for Kibibi. I only wanted what was best for her. But no one listened. The villagers, once her friends and neighbors, now turned away from her. Even Kibibi couldn't look at her mother. Zalika watched as Nyara's sobs filled the air. A part of her still felt the sting of betrayal, but another part felt pity. Nyara's jealousy had destroyed everything, including her own life. Zalika didn't hate her. She only felt sadness for what could have been if Nyara had chosen love instead of envy. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Nyara's figure disappeared down the dusty road, her cries fading into the wind. The village didn't cheer or celebrate. They stood in silence, reflecting on what had been lost and what had been saved. Nyara walked toward the edge of the village, her body trembling with each step. Her face, once proud and cunning, was now hollow and broken. The weight of her exile pressed down on her, but the shame burned even deeper. The people she once fooled now looked at her with disgust and disappointment. Even her own daughter couldn't bear to meet her eyes. She had lost everything, her home, her family, her reputation, and yet her heart still boiled with bitterness. She reached the path that led to the dense forest beyond the village, her breathing ragged and uneven. Her mind raced with thoughts. This isn't fair. It's Zalika's fault. If she hadn't survived, none of this would have happened. The wind began to pick up, rustling the trees with an eerie howl. The sun was high, but the light seemed to dim as a strange shadow crept along the ground behind her. Nyara didn't notice. She was too consumed by her own hatred to feel the shift in the air. But the villagers did. The crowd, still gathered in stunned silence, watched her retreating figure. A faint, uneasy murmur rippled through them as they noticed the darkness slithering along the dirt path, moving unnaturally fast, as if it had a life of its own. The air grew heavy, cold, and wrong. Zalika felt it too. Her heart tightened. This wasn't over. Nyara took one last step toward the forest's edge and froze. Her body jerked stiffly, her head snapping up as though an invisible hand had grabbed her. Her eyes widened in terror. The ground beneath her feet trembled and cracked, dark tendrils of shadow rising like smoke, twisting unnaturally around her ankle. The villagers gasped as the shadows formed into claw-like hands, black as midnight, reaching up from the earth. They moved with a sinister purpose, wrapping around Nyara's legs and pulling her down inch by inch. She screamed, her voice high and shrill, echoing through the village like a wounded animal. "No, no, please help me!" she wailed, her arms flailing wildly. Her eyes darted to the crowd, desperate. "Kibibi! Zalika! Someone help me!" Kibibi turned her face away, tears streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't watch. Zalika stared, her heart pounding, but she knew this wasn't something she could stop. This was the curse. the very one meant for her. It had come full circle, and now it was claiming the soul that deserved it. The shadows tightened their grip, yanking Nyara deeper into the ground. Her feet disappeared, then her legs. Her hands clawed at the dirt, but it crumbled beneath her fingers. The darkness swallowed her inch by inch, her screams turning to desperate sobs. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." But it was too late. The ground didn't listen to pleas, and neither did the curse. The last thing the village saw was her face, twisted with fear and regret, before the shadows pulled her under completely. The earth sealed itself with a final hollow thud, and then there was silence. For a long moment no one moved. The wind that had stirred so fiercely moments ago died down, leaving only a heavy stillness. It was as if the world itself exhaled, relieved the curse had taken what it was owed. The crowd stood frozen, their faces pale and horrified. None of them had ever seen such a thing before, nor would they ever forget it. Zalika closed her eye, a wave of sadness washing over her. Nyara's fate was horrifying, but it wasn't undeserved. The curse hadn't been meant for Zalika. It was meant for the heart filled with cruelty and envy all along. Karma had struck back, and it wasn't merciful. The village of Wajumba, once filled with sorrow and betrayal, slowly began to heal. The darkness that had hovered over the people lifted, and the air felt lighter, warmer, as though the land itself was breathing again. Zalika stood among her people, no longer the quiet, kind girl they once knew, but a symbol of strength and hope. Her journey through pain, betrayal, and near death had shaped her into something more than anyone could have imagined. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a hero. The village elders gathered, and without hesitation, declared Zalika the new healer of Wajumba. It was more than just a title. It was a sign that the village believed in her. She wasn't chosen for her powers or the glow that once surrounded her. She was chosen for her heart, her courage, and her unwavering kindness, even in the face of cruelty. The people cheered her name, voices rising in unison, celebrating not just her return, but the new beginning she represented. Children ran to her with bright eyes, and mothers blessed her for the strength she carried. The old storytellers began weaving her tale into songs and fables, promising that future generations would remember the girl who walked into a cursed cave and returned, not as a victim, but as a legend. Kibibi, who once believed Zalika was her rival, stood quietly at the edge of the crowd. Her face was no longer filled with jealousy or anger. She looked at Zalika with something new, admiration. The truth had shattered the lies her mother had fed her, and Kibibi saw Zalika for who she truly was, a sister, not by blood, but by spirit. Kibibi approached Zalika, her head bowed low. "I was wrong," she said, her voice trembling with guilt and sincerity. "I believed my mother's lies, and I hated you for things you never did. But you saved me, even when I didn't deserve it. You saved all of us." She swallowed hard. "I want to learn from you, Zalika. I want to become better, like you." Zalika smiled, her eyes soft with forgiveness. She reached out, lifting Kibibi's chin gently. "You already are better, Kibibi. The moment you chose to see the truth, you became stronger than the girl you used to be. If you want to learn, I will teach you. We'll heal this village together." Tears filled Kibibi's eyes, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from hope. The people of Wajumba stood together, united by the truth and the promise of a brighter future. Where once there was betrayal, now there was unity. Where there was jealousy, now there was compassion. And where there was pain, now there was healing. Thanks to Zalika, her story became more than a tale of survival. It became a reminder that even the deepest betrayals could lead to redemption, and that kindness, no matter how battered, would always rise stronger than hate.